Good evening. This is the Walpole Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight is Wednesday, March 2nd. It is just after 7 p.m. and we have 3 cases this evening. The first one that we're going to take is case number 0520. It's the remand from the Housing Appeals Committee on the mediated revision of the previously denied comprehensive permit for Wall Street Development Corporation, Housing Appeals docket number 2104, to review proposed changes to the ingress and egress of the project site from High Plain Street, Route 27, Dupey Street, in Walpole, Massachusetts, zoning district Residence B. So the reason why we're, first off, just so I know, how many people are here? Just raise your hand if you're here for this case. Okay. So I'm assuming many of you are also here for the High Plain Street further down also. But what we want to do is, we went through a very long public hearing process to get to where we were on the 40B. It's a comprehensive permit for 8 units of housing on about just over an acre and a half, not even an acre and a half of land at the end of Dupey Street. We had the public hearings. We went back and forth with the applicant who's here tonight and came up with a plan that we thought was close to what was going to be a workable plan. But at the end, the zoning board felt that it was unsafe because of the turning radius on High Plain Street with fire trucks entering the property and this and that. So the zoning board denied the case. And it's sort of unusual to deny a 40B housing development project, but we did. And the applicant, within his rights, appealed to the Housing Appeals Committee, and they said that we should have mediation on this. So the zoning board had a mediation session, and town council was there, Bob Fitzgerald was there, I was there, and we went back and forth for pretty much a whole morning to figure out what we could come up with that would make this plan better. And we made some progress, I think, but now what we wanted to do is we wanted to present that to the public, because many of you sat through the public hearing process with us, and the last you knew, the plan was denied. And we have not approved anything yet, but we thought that it was only fair that people heard what was being proposed and have your comments for it, because many of you had been here through the whole process. So, does anybody have any this is just procedural stuff. Does anybody have any questions about what I just said as far as why we're having this hearing? Yes, sir.
Where's the location again? I'm sorry, you said.
Dupey Street, end of Dupey Street, but the Dupey Street is on Route 27, High Plain Street. Okay. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to ask town council to explain where we are in this process and what's happened, and really what our options are, and what we're going to ask you, the neighbors of this project, is to give us your input as far as your thoughts of what you see about concerns or issues or no issues. Okay. So George, good evening. You want to explain where we are in this process, and if I said anything incorrect, please correct that.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. George Pucci from Town Council's office. That's pretty much exactly right as you described it, Mr. Chair. You went through a lengthy process on the underlying hearing on the original 40B application. The board worked very hard on a approval with conditions approving the project. And then when it went to further discussion and deliberations, the board actually voted to deny the project. But you went ahead in that denial decision and you crafted a number of conditions that would apply to an approval, and then you explained the basis for denial, and then issued that denial. The applicant appealed to the Housing Appeals Committee. As a result of that process, we agreed to engage in mediation, which was not a public process, but you're bringing it back for a public hearing now. And what was discussed at that mediation was a proposed amendment to the plan that would address or help to mitigate that egress and mainly the entering part of it for Dupey Street for fire apparatus. So there was a modified plan presented to the board as a result of that mediation. We filed with the applicant's attorney a joint motion with the Housing Appeals Committee to have a public hearing on that proposed modification. So what the boards and the Housing Appeals Committee agreed to do that, so they remanded it for a further public hearing to the board. So it's a public hearing just like before. The applicant can speak in favor of it, the board can ask questions, the public can give input or ask questions if they'd like to, if you want to entertain that, Mr. Chair. But this remand hearing is limited to this issue of, has that issue about the turning radius into the project, into that roadway, been sufficiently addressed or mitigated so that you would be interested in converting your prior denial decision into an approval, and also incorporating all the conditions that would have otherwise applied had you gone ahead and granted the project in the first place. In the event that you either deny the project modification or you add additional conditions that the applicant is not happy with, the applicant will have the right to proceed with their original appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee. At that point, all bets are off, really, because they can open it up, they can return to their original application in terms of the amount of units that they're seeking. And they also will not be bound by the conditions that you put into that denial decision. So it'll all be new for the appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee. And then the Housing Appeals Committee would decide whether to affirm your denial or issue a permit. And when they rule against a board, they don't send it back to the board to condition it. They'll basically order the board to issue the permit and give a set of boilerplate conditions that are not the type of conditions that you would work on in your due diligence, like such that you have on the decision now. So that's somewhat of the risk that the board faces in the event of either a denial or further conditions that the applicant is unhappy with. So that's what you're here for tonight. This is not a process where you get the full 6 months like you got on the original permit application. There's a time deadline to complete this hearing within 60 days of opening it, and then you'll have to render that decision and file it within 14 days after that. So if you have any further questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's basically the nutshell of where you're at now.
Okay. I'm sure we'll come back to you for some questions, George. Okay. So let's talk about where we're at on the project. We're not going to talk about drainage on the project because we've already gone through that. The only issue that we really have is the safety of fire apparatus turning into into Dupey Street. And one of the things that came out in the mediation process was that the applicant was willing to move a telephone pole on High Plain Street so that it would help the turning radius for fire apparatus going into the site. And we have the plans, and according to the plans, it still shows the fire engine going over the center line, but not as much as before. So that's one of the things that, that was the issue that we're looking at right now, is the safety of equipment, particularly fire apparatus, turning into the site. So that is where we're at in the mediation. It came up that the telephone pole would be moved, and that would make the project safer. So, Bob, you were there for this. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that sums it up.
Okay.
Very well.
George, anything else?
No.
Okay. Hey. Good evening, Mr. Petrosi and council. Is there anything you want to add on this at this time?
No, I did bring the modified plan with me if the other board members want to look at it.
Okay. Do you want to put it up there? Yeah, I think everybody has, you all have a small scale plan of this. But you can put it up, maybe the camera can pick it up for people at home and anybody in the audience.
So, as you said, Mr. Chairman, we did have a lengthy discussion to improve the intersection of Dupey Street and High Plains Street. The concern at the time, when we had the hearing process, was that the ladder truck exiting or entering the site would have to go encroach upon the other travel lane in order to enter or exit the site. And that was a concern that the board had as a reason they denied the project. Since that time, during the mediation process, our traffic consultant and engineer participated and came up with an alternative of flattening out the radius and moving this the existing utility pole approximately 5 or 6 feet further to the west. And that allows the fire apparatus to enter the site with just a small encroachment into the opposite lane, keeping in mind that all other emergency vehicles, pumper trucks and other ambulances and other vehicles like moving trucks and trailers and so on were able to make this turn. It was just simply the town's ladder truck that had the problem, not a problem, but had a difficulty staying within the lane that was on the design that we had originally proposed. So, I'm not sure I can add much to that, except that it's in this general area where it's on the westerly side of Dupey Street. And that is the side where if there was emergency fire, they would be coming from that direction, from the center of town. And that would be the entrance for most emergency vehicles if they were to have to attend an emergency on the site.
Okay.
That's pretty much what we.
No, I think that's sums that up. Okay, and thank you for the updated plan. Okay, are there any neighbors or butters or anybody that wants to comment on this as far as, what your thoughts are on this modified safety of the fire apparatus? Yes. Do you want to come forward, identify yourself, and make your comments?
My name is Mike Mall, I live at 3 Dupey Street.
You want to come up to the microphone, please?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's seen Dupey Street, it is not wide. And how wide are you gonna try to make it?
It's gonna be, I think, a 20-foot or 22-foot paved.
Barely. I think that was a concern. Is it gonna be a one-way, or is it gonna, trying to get that much traffic in and out of there for that many units?
So, you know what, everything through the board, not to the applicant, so,
I'm sorry.
so to answer your question, because we're talking about access in here, it's,
Yeah.
it's gonna be, it's proposed as a two-way road on that.
Okay. But it is, it's tiny. So, we barely fit down. There's only 3 of us on there, and that is a major concern. That much more traffic going in and out of there. A plow truck can barely fit down. It's like a 1 lane, basically. It's basically a driveway, the road itself. So, that's the only thing I have a concern with. My kids are there, and we're walking, they walk their way to school, and maybe for a few more years, but, so that's a major concern.
Okay.
It really, I think so. I was thinking to do a project like that, you'd probably need to buy up the whole neighborhood. There's only 3 of us, 4 of us there to make that, I would think, accessible for that many buildings or that many homes. So when that initially got started, I thought it was gonna be off a Summit, 1 road in, maybe a cul-de-sac, a few houses, but it's asking a lot, I think, for 40B for that unit, so, that's my major concern.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Kieran Martin from 16 Victoria Circle. One of the things I want to raise with the board is less about the actual widening of the radius, but the movement of the utility pole. And I don't know if I want to draw your attention back to the traffic review presentation that was done in September 21st, 2020. I haven't seen one done since then. I think that's the latest. And in slide 6 of that, it was done by Green International Affiliates. In slide 6 of that, one of the things they do is they measure the intersection site distance. And looking east, there's no problem. It's required to be 250, recommended to be 390, but they can see 825, so that's fine. Looking west, required to be 250, desired to be 390, but it's 350, which is close, but over the required. But if I draw your attention to slide 3, which actually shows the photo of what it's looking like when you look west. I don't know if you have it to hand or if you want this.
Yeah, do you want to pass that around?
Just that first picture on the left I'm going to refer to. So to me, you can see how tight that is in the 350 feet. I would challenge the board to, if that utility pole moves even 5 feet to the left, I would say it invalidates this traffic assessment, because it moving to the left means it further impairs the sight distance. I think that people would have to stop further up Dupey Street to have more of a chance, or actually come out onto High Plain Street to look around it. And if they were where this was taken from, I don't think they'd meet the 250.
Thank you, that's helpful, thank you. Yes?
Can I just ask a quick question? Can I see the reverse side to see what the plans actually look like?
Oh, yeah. Can you turn that? Wait, when you say the plan, are you asking for the whole plan or just?
Just like what the project would actually look like. This is the first time that I've been here to
Yeah.
see this.
Okay.
I've heard about it, so I just wanted to see like.
Okay,
what
so that's, you know, and we appreciate you being here, but we're not gonna talk about the whole project
No,
tonight.
no.
Yeah, we're just gonna,
I just
we're
wanted to
talking,
see it.
okay, yeah, okay. Okay. We'll get this back to you. Okay, so, yes.
257 High Plain on the corner of Dupey.
Can you speak up a little?
I was just wondering pretty much where if they say there's a state law that an emergency vehicle cannot cross the double line, then that just kind of concerns me, because then if traffic is coming in the opposite direction when an emergency vehicle is coming, then what's going to happen is more injuries.
That's right, and that's why the zoning board denied this. And so what's happened is, that's why the zoning board denied it. We were concerned about the safety. And through the appeal process, it brings us to where we are tonight. And the question is, has this safety issue been fixed enough? Because it hasn't been totally fixed, but has it been fixed enough that the zoning board could approve this project and the applicant would go ahead and build what's been proposed with the conditions that we've put on?
Right.
Or does the zoning board deny this and say, it's still not safe, we're not comfortable with this, we won't approve it, and then the fact is that the Housing Appeals Committee would likely, I don't know if I can legally say likely, but it's not in the town's best interest to have it decided by the Housing Appeals Committee, which they also might turn around and say, yeah, we agree it's unsafe. I don't know what they're gonna say. And
Exactly.
so we run a risk, the zoning board, and you as neighbors run a risk of, fighting this and losing, or go with what we know, which is 8 units with the conditions that we've already put in. Town council, did I say anything out of line there?
That's exactly right, yep.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that that was the law with the state, so it kind of confuses me with how the housing authority can say they approve something when the state says there is, a law in place, so they just kind of didn't set right. So I just thought I'd ask.
Not-
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not quite right.
Yeah.
but-
No?
No, the permit has to comply with state law.
Yeah.
So that's not an issue.
Okay.
I mean, but there's no question about it that the fire apparatus will cross over the
Right.
the median line. And what they did was they presented a plan which is much less of an encroachment this
Right.
time around.
Right,
So, but it's not, the permit will not violate state law.
right. Okay, I was just, wondering how all that worked.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Mr. O'Leary, good evening.
John O'Leary, 776 Washington Street. Question for you. Who determines if a pole can be moved, and who gives the permission through you, Mr. Chairman? Is that the street wardens, or is it the utility company? Who determines whether a pole is allowed to be moved or not?
Okay. So I see that we have the applicant's counsel. Okay. Go ahead.
I can answer that because we're currently involved in a couple other projects that we've required utility poles to be relocated and moved, and that's depending on who owns the pole. In some towns, Verizon owns the pole, and Eversource is a traveler on the pole. And I think in Walpole that Eversource may own the pole. So this will go to Eversource in the design process, and they'll be the ones to determine if where to move the pole and how far to move the pole. They like to keep a certain distance between poles. So, and then they would petition the town, I guess, for the selectmen to relocate the pole within the right-of-way. But it's the utility company that does that, and they would do that, lay out the utilities for the entire project. Once the project is approved and the plans are signed, vice versa, and then that's how it would work.
Okay. Mr. O'Leary, does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Can I just make a comment? I live in the neighborhood, and I just want to say that I find that it's dangerous leaving Dupey Street, going left or right. So it's important just to say that I won't do it because I feel like I have to act fast, dart out. So I mean, you're going to be putting more people on that street. I think just needs to be considered.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yes,
I am Michael Murphy.
do you want to come to the
Sure.
microphone, please?
I'm Michael Murphy. I live at 253 High Plain Street on the corner of Dupey and High Plain. I feel that it's either safe or it isn't. It either complies with state traffic rules, et cetera, or it doesn't. They're not satisfied, they haven't made it fully safe, and they're not complying with state traffic rules or regulations, so I feel it should be denied.
Okay. And so, let me just explain, Mr. Murphy, that's what happened. We did deny it, and the applicant appealed it, and it was sent back to us, and now the question is it safe enough? And your point is, it's either safe or it's not?
It's either safe or it's not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to comment on this? My expectation is, tonight will be, what we've done is we've reopened this case, and we're having this is the public hearing for it. My expectation is, at some point very soon, probably not, maybe tonight, maybe not tonight, we can close this case, and then the board will deliberate and decide. I think, Mr. Murphy, you said it clearly. Is it safe, or is it safe enough or not? and we'll go from there. And then we would, it would be a public decision how the zoning board votes on this, whether we approve it with the conditions or we deny it and see where it goes from there. So there's risk involved for the town, for the neighborhood, and for the applicant at this point. Okay. Town council, oh, yeah.
Hi, Tyler Hool, live at 20 Victoria, one of the abutters. Not to duplicate, but I would just duplicate the issue that Kieran had brought up. By moving the pole, are we creating another issue that we haven't looked into? What does that do for sightlines coming out of Dupey Street, which are already, I mean, I drive my daughter to daycare every morning, and sometimes, yeah, traffic coming out of there is fast, and you do have to gun it a little bit, so wonder what those sightlines look like.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that, the traffic has changed quite significantly from when that traffic study was done.
The traffic study in 2020?
I mean, in just the past, I'm also on Victoria Circle, I pull out on that same, on High Plain, there's a lot more traffic, takes me a lot longer to pull out now.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't know if you would want to mention the peer review study that the board did have done regarding this project as well. I mean, regarding the change to the project as well. Can I ask two questions?
Yep.
Lou, do you know the distance to the more south easternly pole further down High Plain?
I do not know. Are you talking about the utility pole?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the proposed 5 feet that you have here, if it overextends the amount of what they allow, they might potentially add an additional pole on the
Well, we might-
right-hand side as,
In my other situation, I had to move 2 poles to keep the distance proportionate.
right,
I think they like to keep 125 feet to 150
About
feet
150,
between
yeah.
poles. So, quite honestly, it doesn't look, when you're out there, it doesn't look like it's a problem in terms of moving just one of the poles 5 feet. They're not gonna, it's a de minimis type of change.
Right.
It's not gonna affect.
no, I guess my only thought is if you're maxed out and you're moving 5 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
And now all of a sudden they say, we're gonna drop another one on the other side, now you're kind of adding 2 other obstructions to your view onto High Plain Street.
Well, we wouldn't add, we'd have to add and delete, so to speak. So we're not gonna put 2 poles like 10 feet apart from each other.
Right.
So we
One
would.
of the other questions I had, my main concern was the turn radius onto oncoming traffic for the fire apparatus. But really, it boiled down to construction traffic and, the potential for larger vehicles that don't have red lights and sirens that can stop traffic and make that turn that is gonna be tight. Is there any other considerations you've thought to, as far as the construction sequence and how you would help to mitigate any potential hazard in that turn radius with your construction project?
Well, if it becomes a day when there's expected to be heavy truck traffic, then we would have a police detail available. Like, for example, when you're dropping equipment off excavators, and if they can't
Navigate
drive
the
in,
turn.
because right now it's narrow, but once it's built out, it'll be a normal width. But if that happens and they have to back in, then we'll have to have a traffic detail for the short period of time that's there. So we would request that from the police department to be there when heavy equipment is to be dropped.
Okay, thank you, that's all I
That's a
had.
condition
Thanks.
that could be added.
Right.
Okay. We do have a letter from Tetra Tech. This is the company that did the peer review. So the way it works is the applicant had their engineer from probably Green, was it? Yeah, from,
Graham, is it
no,
traffic?
I'm sorry, GLM Engineering did the turning radiuses, and then Tetra Tech reviewed it, and this is what's called a peer review, so it's an outside set of eyes that doesn't work for the applicant, and they looked at the new proposal and said, has 3 points. I'm not going to read every bit of it, but I'll read the key parts. 1, proposed design meets applicable Mass Department of Transportation intersection design guidelines. 2, emergency vehicle encroachment is relatively small. And 3, travel vehicles in encroached are expected to pull over. So the peer review took a look at this, and his opinion was that, yes, there's still an encroachment, but it's meeting the Mass Department of Transportation standards of an intersection. So I just put that out there for everybody. Okay, so we've been discussing this for about 20 minutes more. Board members, does anybody have any comments or questions on where we're at for this?
Sorry, John, just your last comment there, does that meets the intersection requirements? Are you saying that also, he's also validated it meets the sightline requirement?
Yes, sightline, he wasn't reviewing the sightline. We've already gone through the sightlines before. Your point about moving the pole, does it change the sightlines, is a good point, at least as far as I'm concerned. But that's what, we're not talking about sightlines at this point. The only issue that we're really talking about here is the safety of vehicles turning into the site. Okay. Okay. Yes.
John, if we could just from a level set standpoint, maybe talk about what was originally proposed versus what's before us now, and maybe the conditions that the board had put in place relative to that. Like, I guess what I'm really trying to say is, what are the actual risk points in the event that we deny this again? And it goes back to HAC, what does the town / abutters actually have on the table to lose? Like, what are those conditions that, like, for example, did he originally propose a 15-unit proposal that we got to 8 with conditions of A, B, C? And in the event that we deny and he goes to HAC, could he potentially win a 15-unit building with no conditions, et cetera? And then the third part of that is, and I'm sorry for having so many questions, is what was the original encroachment for the swing versus what it is now by feet?
Okay. So the original encroachment, let's start with that one. The original encroachment, meaning the fire truck going over into the other lane, was, they didn't give a footage, they didn't give it, but clearly it was significantly over the solid yellow line. That's why we denied it. So this new plan, it's, again, they don't give an actual footage, although the peer review said it's about a foot, but it is over the yellow line. Okay, so does that answer the first
Yes,
question?
100%.
So it is not as much, but it is not in compliance with, or it's not,
Out of compliance.
it's not, it's still crossing the center yellow line.
Got it.
Okay. The other thing is, you use the term risk. This project started out as a 12-unit project with a large water retention area for stormwater and almost no buffers for the neighbors. After the whole public hearing process, with a lot of work from the zoning board and the applicant and peer review, we got to a point where the stormwater was being handled better. In fact, I would say it was being handled the best we could for the site. Also, neighbors on Victoria Circle got an agreement for trees to be planted as a buffer, and that we worked on the parking. The end is going to be a cul-de-sac, not a hammerhead. A lot of work. There's couple additional parking spots. It's still a tight site. We get that. So, is it better than what we started with? I'd like to think so. That's what we work towards. So what's the risk for the neighbors? If the applicant goes to the Housing Appeals Committee, the Housing Appeals Committee might say, okay, you've got 8 units with all the conditions, or the Housing Appeals Committee could say, you've got 12 units with no conditions. So that's sort of where we're at. Okay. So, and that's why it's important to have this public hearing, so people understand what the zoning board is looking at. Okay, those are the options.
It's one comment, I forget the gentleman's name in the audience, but one of the original conditions the board did put in dealing with lines of sight was covered by the peer review consultant who both did the recent peer review letter as well as the peer review on the entire project. And that had to deal with site triangles for the 85th percentile travel speeds shall be shown on the final plan to ensure all vegetation, existing and proposed, or other improvements do not impede the required line of sight. So that was something that we did think of originally when the board was conditioning the project, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so that's where we're at. People, particularly abutters, do you think that you would be better served with a denial and then risk going forward with the Housing Appeals Committee, or the zoning board say, you know, we deny it, or we approve it with all the conditions that have been worked on? Those are really that's what we're looking at, and we want to have your input on this, because many of you have been through this whole process with us. And we could make this decision on our own, but we made that mistake in another case in town, and it's, you know, it wasn't right. We made a decision, and people felt that it was a decision made behind closed doors. It should be a part of the public process here. So, does anybody want to comment? Yeah.
I have one.
Do you want to come forward again, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not to make it difficult, but again, I'm at 353 Street in Walpole. When it all started, I mean, whoever made that assessment, it was safe, it's okay now. Where do they live? Do they live in that area?
You know,
I'm just saying, do they live right there? And then second is, Dupey Street is not a wide street. I know I said it before, and everyone noticed it. You can't get, 2 cars cannot go at the same time as of now, and I don't know how you're gonna widen that to make it accessible to get down there. So it really, whether it's 12, whether it's 8, whether it's 6, I mean, it's really doesn't, the street in the area doesn't really fit it. I mean, I'd like to see, you know, of course, it's someone's property, they can do what they build on it, but that many all at once, I mean, I think it's a lot to ask for that area to do. I know there's other properties in Walpole, it's a big area, but why that one? I'm just saying, it's like, that Dupey Street is not a big street. I mean, I don't know how you can't even get down there now without having to pull into Janice's driveway when someone's coming. You gotta bet, you know, her driveway's being used, and she hasn't put up blockade, she hasn't said no, and I just don't see how, with my property, hers, and Kristen's, how you're gonna widen that street. You know, whether you move poles, whether you make it accessible for a tri-tri, I don't really think that's the point. I think it's just not a big enough street. That's all. You have to really widen it and, you know, to make it accessible, and just don't see it happening unless, you know, I'm not a builder, so I don't know. But I thought, like I said, when it all started, I know what thought does, but the other way, coming in off a Summit, a cul-de-sac, a couple houses, 3 or 4 houses, you know, to mirror, you know, what Victoria was, that's what I thought that was what the project was gonna be. Then it turned into townhouses, and then here we are, so that's really all I can say, so thank you.
I actually have another question as I think about this a little bit. Do you mind if I move go to the other one? If you move the utility pole westerly, down the
Just
street.
everything through the board, not to the
Yeah,
applicant.
okay, well, I'm just looking at it so I can comment on it. Then, where do the utility lines run to get to the first pole on Dupey Street? Do they run across my yard, above my yard? All of the utility lines run above my yard? I find it difficult to believe that, I suppose it is, I don't know enough about zoning, et cetera, but I suppose that, I find it difficult to believe that they can actually run utility lines over my yard without my approval. I can understand running an electrical line to my house, but not the electrical lines, cable lines, et cetera, for the entire community that's being built behind my house. So that's a big concern to me. And I need to think that one through a little bit and investigate it a little bit also. So my opinion is, my vote, or my opinion, or whatever is, you should deny the appeal.
I want to just ask, I want to ask town council if they can answer that question, but the utility lines, if, do you know the answer to that?
No, I wouldn't be able to comment on that right now.
Do you know?
No, it's a valid point, certainly, because I
Yeah.
think when you pull the pole back and now you still have overhead lines running up Dupey Street,
Yeah, that
you
raises
could
a
encroach
potential
upon
easement
somebody's.
question. I mean, I'd
Right.
let the applicant respond to that
No,
rather than us.
Mr. Chairman, we have a piece of property down on the Cape, and we ran into something similar to this. And you can't go across somebody's property just arbitrarily.
Okay, Mr. Petroza, do you want to comment on that?
Well, very frequently, I think you can walk through most neighborhoods and you can see utility lines running across property lines. Usually there's an easement in place or some sort. And in this particular instance, the utilities for the project haven't been designed yet. And that will be up to Eversource to, I don't know, did we have a proposal in there for the utilities to be underground?
We did not.
So there's an opportunity that we could go underground from that pole and around the radius, and there's many options to deal with the utilities, but that will be something that we would have a discussion with the utility company at the appropriate time, but certainly not an obstacle.
Would you supply the other people that are currently fed off of the overhead lines in that street?
Well, I don't know how their utilities are right now.
Well, I'm just
There's a
looking at
pole.
the utility pole that's marked on the drawings
Yeah.
that says,
So if there's an existing pole that's on Dupey Street feeding those homes, we could just come right off of those poles with an underground service, or we can continue those poles down the line. So like I said, it's really not an obstacle for that pole that Mr. Murphy is referring to, because there are other existing poles on Dupey Street that feed homes on that right-of-way. So in my estimation, it wouldn't be an issue of an easement or crossing a property line at that point. It would be just simply going down the right-of-way, which we have a 27-foot or 28-foot wide right-of-way, and it'll be 20-foot wide paved, and there'll be sufficient room on the shoulder to install, I think we have some street lighting that's going in there as well, so there's room there for everything.
Mr. Chairman, when I was referring to the situation we had on the Cape, the overhead is not an issue. Obviously, it's the idea of digging up a lawn and putting underground cable that is an issue.
Again,
He's
we're not gonna be on anybody's private property. We're gonna be in the roadway, in the right-of-way, the public way, or the private way, not on anyone's property.
Okay. Anybody else? Particularly, we've had a lot of people from Victoria Circle that have been through these hearings with us when we were both online and, the in-person hearings. Your thoughts on where we're at this point?
Can you just, one last time, just clarify that, the risk, did you say like they could just overrule and say, well, these conditions are good enough, we would approve it, as is with 8 and 5 foot roof, or they could say, you're denying us, and just gonna give him free access to where he wants. Is that the kind of way this could go?
Yeah, so,
Not
there's,
like those would, like,
yeah, there's, one never knows the way an appeal's gonna go. But one of the possibilities would be that the applicant would go to the Housing Appeals Committee and say that my original plan had 12 units here. That's what I'm appealing. And, we've got it to 8 units in what I think is a good plan, but it could end up being 12 units and not a good plan. Town council, am I correct in what I said?
That's correct. They will not, the applicant has the right to return to that original application, 12 units. All bets are off, and I'm not predicting how the Housing Appeals Committee would rule on your denial, but in the event the Housing Appeals Committee overturned your denial, they're not going to adopt your conditions. So the applicant can return to the original project, which is 12 units, and then the Housing Appeals Committee, in the event that they ruled against you and ordered the issuance of the permit, they will not adopt the conditions that you've imposed. They will just put boilerplate stock conditions on it, like it shall comply with state law, issues like that. But not, like I said, not the type of detail that you worked so hard on in terms of the conditions in the decision that you issued, so.
And just so people know in the audience, part of this is, if this is approved by the zoning board and something bad happens out on High Plains Street, meaning an accident, you know, we're gonna feel responsible because we approved it. And that's something that weighs heavily on the zoning board. So, we don't do this lightly, and we also recognize that if we do approve it, it's gonna change your neighborhood, you know, forever. And, we don't do that lightly either. Hold on, right here?
I have a question.
Okay.
The housing board
Would you
is
come-
located here in Walpole or?
It's a state agency. It's a state committee.
So they don't take in consideration at all what community wants for their neighborhood?
They're interested in creating affordable housing in Massachusetts. That's their goal.
No, we understand it, but kind of 500 yards from their property is a big golf course that is on sale for more than 2 years. If they want to build big units, everyone can use that one. Why that all these guys, Duke Street, 173, High Plains, they want just to come where we live and build these 10, 12 units. So there are plenty of other areas in Walpole that these guys think that about the community, they want to build houses. They can go there, buy those properties and build whatever they like to build. Why they need to come to in our neighborhoods and kind of Dupey Street, I live in High Plains Street. Dupey Street is a very narrow road, and every time that someone comes on that street, they have to stay there forever just to pass the street. So now I'm saying building Dupey Street, High Plains Street, so we live in the town of Walpole. We don't live in the city. If we wanted to live in the city, we would have gone in the city, so. If these guys that are support, they have to say no, but it's their call.
Okay,
It's my opinion.
thank you. Okay, yes?
Hearing a little bit differently. Nothing has been said to me personally from the applicant regarding putting up a barrier, because the impact of headlights, whether it's 8 houses or 12 units, whatever amount, my house is the one that gets all the headlights and all the traffic in addition to turning around in my driveway. But more importantly, I don't want to have all the lights in my house. It's going to impact my living. So I would have appreciated, I had requested in a letter for the applicant to contact me, and I know that people on Victoria Circle have been told that there would be stuff done for them, but no one has had the courtesy to speak to me. So I just wanted to get that out there because I know where we are in the process. It's been a long process. And it's unfortunate that it's happening, but just trying to make the best of the worst situation. So I just wanted to get that on the record, that I am concerned about, you know, not having any kind of a barrier, whether I would like to have a fence or a fence of trees of my choice.
Okay.
So I just wanted to have that on the record, and thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think what we'll do now is we're gonna Town Council, does it make sense to keep this open, or should we, well, actually, it does, because once we close it, we're gonna only have, we're only gonna have 14 days to get the decision done.
Well, correct, but, I mean, you can't, you have to have a reason to keep the hearing open as well.
The reason we're gonna keep it open is we still have to do the waivers. Patrick, you and I talked about that.
Yeah, so when the board originally denied the decision, there was never a final vote on the requested waivers, so that process hasn't gone anywhere since the last time we discussed this back in May of '21. So.
Okay. So I think what we should do is, we should keep it open, we'll have a discussion on waivers, and we'll also have a discussion, how, you know, is this something that the zoning board feels comfortable approving, or denying again?
Yeah, if you keep it open, Patrick was saying, which I would agree with, maybe have some draft conditions to look at in the event. You know, oftentimes, a board will ask staff, you know, to prepare a possible denial or a possible conditions of approval. It might be helpful to look at that about, in the event that the board were to grant the modification and want to issue the permit, you might want to look at what those conditions would look like in the meantime. I would also recommend strongly you do look at the decision that you have, the denial decision. Everybody should read it carefully to see what you are jeopardizing really in the event. And you, it's up to the board. I'm not a board member, and vote however you want. But you should take a look and, you know, decide, well, are these conditions worth us, you know, granting this modification so that we preserve this on what we worked on, and getting that unit count. And in the event you can't approve it, then you have to, you know, vote how you see it based on the evidence before you. And, but again, if you deny it, the appellant can go forward with the Housing Appeals Committee appeal.
Okay, so why don't we continue this until, what do we have?
I could have something ready for the next meeting.
Okay, let's have something ready for the next meeting, and at that point, but I think
16.
you've heard where we're at. If people want to show up, it's a public hearing, you're welcome to show up. I will take comments at that time. But really, at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at what we've already got for conditions, meaning things that the applicant would do to make this project better for the neighbors, and then we'll discuss how we're gonna proceed, whether we approve it, understanding that the traffic is not perfect on Route 27, but we don't wanna risk all the benefits that have been negotiated for the neighbors, or are we gonna deny it because, I think as Mr. Murphy said, it's unsafe, I forget how you worded it, but it's either safe or it isn't.
One thing, John, too, I would suggest is, maybe from the applicant, we could find out from them, okay, yeah, I accept these conditions. You wouldn't want to find out after you voted it that, they want to proceed with appeals on 4 of the 5 conditions that, are of importance.
Okay.
So you might want to get, some type of input about how the applicant would envision a approved modified permit, whether it substantially adopts the original decision and then adds some conditions and turns it into an approval, or are there other conditions that they're concerned about that you don't want to be surprised later?
Okay. Actually, I see council coming forward. Good evening.
Yeah, we welcome the opportunity, especially if you keep the public hearing open. It gives an opportunity for us to have some back and forth on it. We looked at the prior conditions. There are some we'd be happy to discuss if Patrick and George put together a draft. We're happy to look at it and have that kind of discussion. I mean, we can't commit to anything right now, but we certainly know that there'd be a good number of boilerplate as well as specific conditions, the landscaping and other conditions that we're happy to discuss. So we'll wait and see.
Okay. That's
Because
reasonable.
you wouldn't want to go through this whole process and in the event you ended up with an approval of the modification, and then you end up with an appeal anyway. So,
Right.
so it'd be good to get that input.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, so we're gonna continue this, we're gonna keep this hearing open until, Patrick, what's our next
So the
meeting, 2
16th.
weeks from now?
March 16th.
March 16th, and we'll go through, at that point, we'll go through the items on this, and we'll also have a discussion where the board members are on approval or denial of this.
I would formally vote on that.
Yep, okay. So could I have a motion to continue this until March 16th?
So moved.
Moved by Jane. Second by Drew. Okay, any further discussion on just, this is just to continue the hearing. We're not taking a vote of anything else. All those in favor, this is the 5 regular board members voting on this. Please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. So March 16th, here at Town Hall, we'll continue this, and at that point, we'll have all the conditions laid out, and you can always talk to Patrick during the week if you want to get an update on these items. Okay, at this point, I've asked, so if you're here for Dupey Street, we're done with Dupey Street for tonight, and we're gonna get to High Plains Street next. But I asked Town Council to give us an update on some appeals that are going on. So, George, do you want to just update the board quickly on Stone Street, KW Steel, and Kearsarge?
So Stone Street, we're still working out a schedule for, that would be a case-stated trial, which is just briefing and the evidence that was before the board, like the peer review report, and those types of things. And then we would submit briefs, both sides would submit briefs about arguing each side's case, and there'll also be a site visit from the judge. So we're still working out that briefing schedule, and I'll update you. I would recommend at least Patrick be at the site visit to be able to point out to the judge. They don't take testimony or anything like that, but it's good to have somebody there that can show the lay of the land to the judge. It's helpful. Kearsarge, just briefly, we have a status conference on Friday. What we envision on that case would be a dispositive motion for a summary judgment to affirm the board's denial decision on that. Basically, that the bylaw is valid, and that they didn't prove their case in terms of an essential government function or the Dover Amendment protected educational use.
And that's when, just for the board, when is that?
That's has not been scheduled yet, but that's what I'm gonna suggest to the court at a status conference that's on Friday.
Okay.
To the court, and then the court will likely set up a schedule for that. Patrick has been of great help assisting. We had written discovery from the other side, and Patrick's been assisting in getting out responses to that. So he's been very helpful, and it's much appreciated, and it also prevents us from taking up your time, because you're volunteer members, and Patrick's been handling that, so I don't have to, ask you 50 million questions outside of the hearing process. And then KW Steel, I got an update from the attorney. They have not moved out yet, but they did stop operations according to him, and they're in the process of vacating the premises as agreed. They agreed to vacate at the end of their lease, in which case the case will become moot. And hopefully the town can reset the clock about tenants in that building in the future, make sure they get a certificate of occupancy, know it's gonna go on there, and put some conditions on it, would be a great result for everybody, town and the neighbors. And that, I think that's it.
Okay. And we do have one other appeal that George is not handling, and that is Coolidge with the cars on the property, the extra cars over the limit. And George he doesn't have the update on that, so that's still in process. Patrick, do you have an update on that?
No, I've spoken to Attorney McDermott from KP Law, and I think they had a conference at council about a month ago. Asked for feedback. I haven't heard anything yet. That's all really I have on that.
Okay, good. Okay, George, thank you. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, George.
Okay, so that gives us an update of where the zoning board's at. Okay, the next, what we have is hearing for This is case number 22-1, High Plain Holding LLC, 173 High Plain Street, special permit under section 5B13G of the zoning bylaws to allow a 3-story, 10-unit, mixed-use residential development within the business zoning district. And this is continued from February 2nd. I'll also add that at the February 2nd meeting, I was not here. Jane Coffey was not here, but we have used the Mullen Rule so that the 5 regular members will be on the board. Mullen Rule is that we've certified that we reviewed the video of the proceedings, and we are up to speed on what has taken place with this case. So right now, it is the 5 regular voting members for the zoning board on this case. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Dan Merrickin with Legacy Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant. When we left you last, we were in the process of making some plan revisions. They are just about done. They weren't ready for tonight's meeting. What I did, there were questions at the last meeting about traffic impacts, and I did submit a more detailed letter with some additional traffic information. I wanted to present that to you tonight and see if that addressed your questions. And I'm also, for the members who weren't here at the last meeting, I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have about the project. So we had provided some information. The zoning bylaw does not require a full traffic study for this project because it's less than 500 trips per day. And we provided the planning board with some information on this, but I prepared a letter outlining more detailed trip generation information. And this is based on data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, known as ITE. They have trip generation data. Basically, any kind of a use that you can think of, they have data that projects how many trips that use will get. And a trip consists of a vehicle entering or exiting a site. So if a vehicle comes into the site, that's 1 trip. It parks for 10 minutes and leaves, that's a 2nd trip. So trips is not cars. Trips is just entering and exiting the site. So for this site, we have 10 residential units proposed. And if you look at, basically, there's not difficulty getting in and out of this area during off-peak hours. It's during the peak AM hours and peak PM hours where you'd be concerned about the ability to get in and out. So looking at that specifically, exiting the site in the peak AM hour would be 3 trips, 3 cars trying to exit the site in the peak AM hour. And in the peak PM hour, 2 cars trying to leave the site. That's over an hour. We looked at, there were questions because the first floor commercial use, we don't have tenants. So we explained to the board that, given the site configuration, it's likely to be an office type of a use, but we also considered the fact that it could be some kind of small retail use. So we looked at both of those. And if it were an office in the AM peak hour, you'd have 2 vehicles trying to exit the site. And if it were retail, you'd have 2 vehicles trying to exit the site. And in the PM peak hours, if it were an office, you'd have 9 vehicles trying to exit the site. And if it were retail, it would be 11. So when you look at the total range of the combined uses possible, in the AM peak hour, leaving the site, 6 vehicles. In the PM peak hour, leaving the site, 11 to 13 vehicles, depending on which type of use. So you have to have that in some kind of context, right? It's not the question of that we're going to generate additional traffic. Any use generates traffic. It's a question as to whether it's going to have an adverse impact, a significant adverse impact on the operation of traffic in the neighborhood. And the answer to that is no. Mass DOT has a trip count station just up the road, and for 2021, they had a total of 15,000 vehicles traversing Route 27 in this area. So, when you're talking about a handful of vehicles trying to exit the site during peak hours compared to 15,000 vehicles going during the day, it's not an issue, in my opinion. It's not an issue. You should note that 2021 was COVID. So that's a low figure. If you go back to 2019, it's a couple thousand more. It's like 17,000, 18,000 vehicles over the course of a day. The other thing that we looked at was site distance. We provided this information to the planning board, but I thought I would provide it to you as well. Both looking at stopping sight distance, which is what it would take for a vehicle traveling on Route 27 to stop if they saw someone trying to exit the site. And also intersection sight distance, which is a vehicle trying to exit the site, how far do they need to see to be able to make a safe maneuver out of the site. And we have, in both of those cases, more than 500 feet of sight distance in either direction, which is more than ample for the speeds that are out there. The required sight distance is based on traveling speed. This intersection is close to this site is close to the intersection, which means that the vehicles are doing a lot of stopping and starting. You know, peak speeds, there are times, I'm sure, during the day when it's not very busy at that intersection that a car could travel through the intersection unencumbered and achieve, 35 miles an hour, maybe 40 if they're really going. But during busy times, cars are constantly in the process of slowing down for the light, waiting at the light, and speeding up. I sat out there, I watched that light. It does a full cycle every 50 seconds. So it's a lot of vehicles kind of slowing down, stopping, starting up and going. So average speeds, travel speeds, are really not high because of that. So 500 feet of sight distance is adequate for 50 miles an hour. We don't have speeds in that magnitude in that location at all. So sight distances are adequate as well for this site. So I wanted to present that to you and answer any questions you had about that and see if that addressed your questions and concerns about it.
Okay, one of the things, and I know are you a traffic engineer?
Traffic engineers are professional engineers. I'm a professional engineer. I do some aspects of traffic engineering, yes.
So we've had traffic engineers before the board in the past. Are you a traffic engineer such as we've had from the previous applicant from Green?
I don't specialize exclusively in traffic engineering.
So one of the things, you talked about the numbers, the data that you used for putting together your memo or your report here. That's from data at Old Post Road, is that correct? Or where is that collection point?
It's a Mass DOT's count at Old Post Road.
Old Post Road and Route 27?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things, this is probably half mile down the road at one of the major intersections in town. And, you talk about cars stopping for the lights. Well, at the same time, there's also cars that are going through pretty quick for the lights, making the lights. So I think that it was brought up at the last meeting, almost everybody brought up the issue of traffic. So I think we need to have a traffic study that shows that the access out to Route 27 can be done safely at this intersection. And the other thing that needs to be really considered is over the next 2 years, the traffic in that area is going to change dramatically, and that's with the construction of the new middle school, right? Within, a quarter, actually, the entrance is probably about 500 feet from the entrance to your site. So I think we need to make sure that's taken into consideration, how that's going to change, particularly during peak travel times. So I do think that we need a more substantial traffic study on this. Thoughts from other board members on this? Dave?
I just would like to echo the comment on the school and just add to that we now have 2 middle schools. We're going to have a combined middle school where all of the children will now be at that school, which is double the traffic of the existing school that's in it.
And the town of Walpole is in the process of conducting their own traffic study for the school, and they will analyze the intersection, and if they feel that changes need to be made to the intersection for the school, they will propose those changes.
For the school.
For the school.
Not relevant to this development.
Correct, and
Right.
the issue is, this development is tiny compared to the school activity. We're not gonna impact the operation of the intersection. The school, if they will impact it in a negative way, then the town of Walpole will deal with that when they bring the project forward.
And you may be correct, which if you provide a traffic study, will prove.
I think the big issue on this comes down to traffic. That's the issue. getting people in and out of the site safely, and that's what the zoning board has to look at. So, you know, you're not asking for any variances or anything like that, but you know, under special permit, it's all coming down to the safety on this site. So, I think that's gonna be necessary for us to understand that this can be built in a way that's gonna be safe for the people that are going into the site and people traveling along the road, and kids walking along the sidewalk going to school, which kids will be doing that, and they do it now. So, anything else?
No.
Okay.
I agree, I agree, Mr. Chairman. I think we should have an independent, just somebody independent of the project itself.
Yeah, my only, well, not my only, but one of the major concerns I have is that somebody's gonna consider this their residence. A person coming into a business is gonna treat it with the utmost concern and care when they're entering and leaving the property, but someone who comes there every single day and travels in and out becomes complacent with the situation and could ultimately end up in, you know, a catastrophic or major safety issue in that area. And really, that's what you're applying for, is the residency above the business. And, you know, I'd echo what the chairman said, and I said before, is that the traffic in that area is certainly a concern and should be addressed. And not that this isn't valuable data, but I guess I'd like a more in-depth look at the current situation that's out there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm not sure how I'll tie this together with the traffic, but I did look seriously at the abutting properties, and basically, I'm concerned with the 8-foot distance of the building to the sidewalk. It looks to me like the complex at 684 Washington Street has frontage on Washington Street. The house that's part of that parcel, their side setback is like about 10 feet. So that's the closest, and that's at the intersection. The property at 173, the closest part of the building, existing building, house, is 16 feet, and then there's the longer portion that parallels the street is about 30. And the house, and the next lot is 16. My concern is that 8-foot distance, and I know it's allowed in a business zone, and it's allowed in a downtown-looking area, but this is a neighborhood. My concern with the traffic is pulling out and trying to see around, have the best left to right vision you can see without that building being there at 8 feet.
The building doesn't interfere with sight distance.
Pulling-
You know, the applicant's gonna spend a bunch of money, they're gonna give you a traffic study, they're gonna tell you exactly that.
Okay, well, through you, Mr. Chair, pulling forward and having a building 8 feet from the sidewalk, to me.
AASHTO has specific standards about intersection sight distance measurements. You measure it from a point 14.5 feet from the edge of the traveled way. We've made the measurement like that. The building doesn't interfere with intersection sight distance in the manner that it's calculated.
Well, I still have a concern with the 8 feet in conformance and harmony and the character of the neighborhood. Again, I'll tie it with the traffic, being able to pull in and pull out of there. And also, I know on the, this has probably nothing to do with traffic, but the location of like the drop-off UPS, Amazon spot, batting 1,000 going up and down that street for the last 2 weeks, where there's been a delivery vehicle parked in the lane going towards Route 1 with cars going around. So I'm not convinced that you're gonna place a spot for them to go, that they're gonna find it the most convenient thing in the world. They're gonna take the path of the least
The
resistance.
bylaw doesn't require that we provide that.
Mhm.
We're providing that in order to provide the opportunity. The applicant, nor can any property owner control what these delivery companies
Exactly.
do and where they park.
But
So
again, it's safety
we
and
make
traffic.
we make as best provisions as we can, but They're driving the trucks. They do what they want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is it unreasonable for us to ask you to validate your current findings with a traffic study based not only on what you're proposing, but on the projected future, arguably one of the largest traffic-producing developments in the town of Walpole to come in the next 2 years? Meaning
Well, I don't
buses,
think it's-
drop-off, pickup.
I don't think it's the applicant's responsibility to assess the school's
No,
activity.
no,
We don't even
not-
know what they're gonna do. We
Correct.
couldn't do it.
100%, not the school. I'm not asking you to assess the school, nor is anyone here. Given the fact that it is within 500 feet, probably in reality, and again, I'm guessing, maybe, whatever that is, but it's close enough that it's gonna have a significant impact on that intersection that currently exists at A. So to do a study based on, it just validates what you've already reported to us is, 6 cars, 3 cars, 11 cars, which may show that. But then to project out what the potential traffic could be as it relates to that school that is absolutely coming over the next couple of years, I don't think that's like a big ask.
We don't have the information to do that. We don't even know what the school design is like. We hear there's gonna be a driveway on East Street. We have no idea how that traffic distribution is gonna be spread. That is why the town is doing that, because they know what they're proposing to do. So they're gonna study the impact of that. We don't have the information. I reached out to the town's traffic consultant. They did not respond to me.
All right, in fairness to that point, then I would be comfortable with waiting till after those studies are done to consider projects within close proximity to that.
After the school.
Yeah. Because that data is vital to considering any large development projects, and maybe this may or may not be considered large to anyone in this room, but given the current makeup of the neighborhood and where it is, and everything that is there now, I would consider it large, so that's all. I mean, I just, you gave traffic, numbers and considerations based on the fact that you're an engineer, and they may or may not be right. I'm not even arguing that, nor am I qualified to do so, but why not validate them?
Well, we're happy to validate. I can provide you with another opinion from another engineer that addresses these issues that I've discussed with you tonight. That's fine.
So what we're talking about is a traffic study, and this board is very familiar with traffic studies from other developments that we've done and what's necessary for a traffic study, where they're looking at sightlines, they're looking at stopping distances, everything that you've given a summary of, and I think that's reasonable to make sure that this is done safely. Okay. Any other board members with questions? Judy, I think your point about 8 feet is, I look at the plan and it's tight. It goes to the whole issue here that it's a lot going on one lot, but we also, he's not asking for a variance or anything. That can be built as of right in that location. And, it goes to the point that I think you made, that this is a lot going on in one lot, in a small lot. Okay.
And if I may, it's a lot going on, and the buildings were there, and then somehow the zoning took place. That house was built in 1900. So someone thought it was a wise idea to create that as a business zone. That's fine. However, it's what's grown around that business zone is a neighborhood. And like I said, some of them are side set yards, the complex at 684. The house itself that's gonna get torn down is 16 or 30 feet. I mean, to stay in harmony, which is what we're supposed to look at, and remain with character of a neighborhood, regardless of whether it's B, RB, RA, R. Character of the neighborhood is character of the neighborhood. It's like it's safe or it's not safe. We heard that at the other hearing. So it's either it's in harmony with the neighborhood or it's not. And I know they tried their best to make it look like a home, but it's still a business allowed with a lot going on upstairs.
Well, as I mentioned at the last meeting, and, I get the sense of the board will undertake a traffic study, but as I said at the last meeting, this is a business zone. A lot of things can go there by right with no approval from this board. And my opinion is that this is better than a lot of those potential uses. That this is, given that it's a business zone, given what could go in there, only going to the planning board for site plan approval, this is a good option for this site, in my opinion.
And that's a good point, because I think we're familiar with other business zones and other things that could go in there. One of the things that we should be clear about is, and Patrick and I talked about this today, when a zoning board approves or deny, let's just say it's approved with, in making it as safe as possible, the retail space could be a lawyer's office or an engineer's office, minimum traffic. But under the zoning bylaws, it could also be a convenience store. And that's something that we don't approve the use of what happens in there. We just approve the building, and then what goes in there goes in there. So that's why it's extremely important that we make sure that it can support both a convenience store, and it can also support, you know, a lawyer's office or something that would be minimum traffic. So, okay, board members, anything else before we open it up to the public?
No, I just trying to take a left-hand turn out of that site and then take a right onto Washington would be very challenging during rush hour. And to do that, I just think of like a mother trying to rush their kid to school, and that just screams dangerous turn to me. And now we're gonna cram, that many units into that one lot. And how many people have to make that turn now on a regular basis?
I would point out also that the applicant did hear the comments by the board at the last meeting, so they've decided to take 2 of the 10 units and make them 1-bedroom units. So we'd have 8 2s and 2 1s instead of 10 2s. And they're also entertaining the notion of making one of those 1-bedrooms an affordable unit.
That's a nice step in the right direction. That would be one of the 2 units, 2 bedrooms, or the 1-bedroom?
ones.
One would be,
1 bedrooms.
1 bedroom would be affordable.
John, can sorry, I was in the bathroom when you first started presenting, so you may have already said this, and maybe we could cover just what the difference is from this proposal from when you were first here are?
I haven't made any plan changes.
Okay.
I just wanted to come here and talk to you about the traffic information that we provide.
Okay. Bob, anything?
Yeah, I guess I would just say I hear the concerns about the fact that this is a business district. But I feel pretty strongly that the board's role here is not to second guess what the zoning is, but to apply the bylaw as it's written. With respect to dimensional requirements that comply with the bylaw, that's sort of de facto, in my view, evidence that the project is consistent with the bylaw in that respect. I think the relief that's being requested here relates to the 2 floors of residential above business, and so I think we should, in my view, we should be focusing on what are the, our discretionary approval deals with that aspect of the project, and not those that comply with the bylaw. I don't think we can deny a project on the basis that the front yard, for example, is Judy's example. We'd like to see it bigger, and we could have that discussion, but I don't think that the board is in position to deny a project that meets the front setback requirement that's in the bylaw. So I think as we're considering the traffic impacts, I guess my only point is that we just sort of, just need to apply the standards in the bylaw as they are, and not, I could agree in theory that it's, and I do agree, it's kind of odd that this is zoned as a business district that's surrounded by residential, but that's a town meeting issue. That's not a zoning board of appeals issue. And as much as we might want to change that, that's not really our role.
Okay, so Bob, you just talked about the issue of whether 2 stories or 3 stories, so is that something you'd be in favor of possibly limiting it to 2 stories?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we should see all of the information on the traffic study, and then we can have that discussion. I believe the height of the building is not really the issue here, because it's that again, complies with the zoning bylaw. The question is whether the 2 floors of residential above the allowed business uses that's the issue that I'm kind of focused on, and impacts surrounding that, because that's what really would be granting relief to do, which they wouldn't otherwise be allowed to do.
So, are you saying that they could have 2 stories of business and then just one of residential?
No, I think residential, and you can correct me if I'm, residential above business is limited to two times the ground floor area.
Well, yeah, but I think you could have 2 floors of commercial and 1 floor of residential with a special permit. I don't
With a
think you
special
are
permit, right.
required to have the top 2 floors be residential.
Right.
And I would note that, you know, that was brought up at the last meeting, and some of the neighbors have brought that up, and I don't think the applicant would find that something to be reasonable to only have 2 floors on this building. So you just have to weigh that. You obviously can make whatever decision you want, but you have to weigh the fact that if that's not something that's palatable to the applicant, they may not act on the permit, and they may pursue a commercial use allowed by right. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think that's what I brought up, what Bob just said. We have to be sure we're fitting, and this project fits the bylaw. And you haven't yet, because you don't have the plans, and you haven't offered it up yet, is the 2nd and 3rd floor twice the 1st floor.
Yeah, we'll have that for you.
Okay, because it's a big question mark for me. And I
I
think
know
it's
it
gonna
is.
be a big
We-
discussion.
We talked to the building commissioner about your question, and we got an answer on the balconies. They don't count.
I didn't
towards
ask
that.
about the balconies. You're getting your boards mixed up.
Oh, that might have been Jeff. That might have been Jeff.
No, I asked
But we'll
about
have
the-
that, we have revised architectural plans that reflect the 2 one-bedroom units, and that calculation is gonna be on those plans. We're gonna submit that to you.
All right.
Anybody else
That's my
before?
question.
Just a quick question, the reduction from the 2-bedroom to 1-bedroom, does that also reduce the floor area, total floor area of the building, or is that staying the same?
No, the floor area of the building, we're tweaking the floor area a little bit, but it's basically the same.
That's the net floor area.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll open it up to the public at this point. I know at the last meeting, we talked about traffic. That was one of the big things, fitting the neighborhood. We don't want to just repeat everything again. I think what you heard from tonight is the zoning board is going to expect a traffic study, and we'll still work that out with the applicant. And the traffic study will explain how this can be done safely and if it can be done safely. So, does anybody want to come, have any other comments or thoughts about this project? And your input is valuable because it does make a difference on how we proceed and anything that we consider in it, so. Sure, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Eve Piamonte, and I am a direct abutter. I live directly across from where the project would be built. And I apologize, I don't mean to rehash in any way what you went over before, but I was unable to be at your first meeting. So I apologize if I repeat anything. I appreciate the comment about the character of the neighborhood. I've been in the neighborhood for about 8 years now on High Plain Street, a resident of Walpole for about 12 years. And I will say that on High Plain Street alone, while we're talking about traffic and all these numbers, anyone can pull studies and find numbers that support their position. I will say the traffic, at least from my perspective, has increased threefold since 2014 when I moved to the property. I will also say that you heard tonight, we have an increase in traffic on the street already, just over time. There's going to be an increase in traffic with the Byrd Middle School project, double. You heard a proposal tonight for 8 to 10 or 12 more homes. That's another increase in traffic. And now we have another proposal for more homes, which, while I respectfully disagree that it's a handful of trips or a handful of an impact on traffic, There are 2 people who live in my home, and I assure you, and I work full-time, we are making more than 2 trips in and 1 trip out each day. Okay, so that study, I could rebut it, but that number is just wrong. When I ask this board, I realize this isn't a variance, but as one of the board members, Ms. Conroy mentioned, I think this board, when you consider the project, will consider, you look at your zoning bylaws. And the things you look at, a stated zoning bylaw and purpose are lessening congestion in the streets. Well, this project doesn't lessen congestion in the streets, right? Securing the safety of the neighborhood, preventing overcrowding of land, avoiding undue concentration of population, conserving the value of land and buildings, and encouraging the most appropriate use for the site. And so when you look at this building, that I am not an opponent of construction, but when I purchased that home, and I had no idea that it was zoned commercial. It makes 0 sense to me, but so be it. That's what it is. There was a single-family home on that property. To me, that's what that property was zoned for, and to me, that's a reasonable use of that property. So when I hear that suddenly it's zoned commercial, that is what it is. And you're right, the board is not here to rezone. That's not the application before the board. But 2 additional stories of living units, an undefined plan, respectfully, an attitude that doesn't seem to be one that wants to work with the neighborhood about mitigation. What I heard about 4 or 5 times was, it's allowed, it's allowed, it's allowed, and a lot of interrupting of this board's questions. That doesn't signify a developer who's willing to work with the neighborhood, who's willing to make sure that their project doesn't adversely affect the town of Walpole or the direct abutters. And so I just ask this board, if congestion and traffic is an issue, and if these developers are saying they can't address certain questions because the town has to look into Bird Middle School and the town has to come up with a proposal, then I would agree and ask this board to consider waiting on development of the project until all of those traffic considerations are done, or a verified transportation engineering study is presented to this board and to these neighbors. Another point, the 8-foot setback from the property. The side of the street where the project is proposed is the only side of the street that has a sidewalk. So there's no sidewalk on my side of the street. So what you have is the traffic coming up and down all over the lawns of my neighbor, my next door neighbor to my left, my next door neighbor to my right. Tons and tons of that traffic. Again, not this developer's fault, but cars, retail coming in and out of that site on the only side of the street where there's school children walking up and down. There's gotta be a better answer than it's allowed. There has to be some mitigation and some safety measure proposed to this board to protect the safety of the children walking up and down that street. I haven't heard or seen, I've tried to do my homework before coming here tonight, so I wasn't repeating things that this board has heard before. I haven't seen mitigation efforts for the lights, for the traffic, for the safety of the children, for the noise, for the construction. And I haven't seen any mitigation efforts proposed as to how it would best make this project fit with the character of the neighborhood. And so I thank you for your consideration tonight and for hearing me, and I appreciate it.
So let me just answer a couple things that you had there. As far as lighting, they did submit a lighting plan, and it shows the level of light leaving the property, which is something we always look at. And this is all public information. And for the most part, it looks like it's all zeros leaving the property. So yes, you're still gonna see light, but it doesn't reach the level of a certain number of lumens or foot candles or whatever the units they're using. So we do look at that. In the back, there's gonna be two poles with lights on them, and there'll be lighting on the building. But there is a lighting plan that does address that.
I understand. I guess what I'm saying is when my neighbor directly across the street, they just purchased the home and would be a direct abutter. When they back into their driveway, it lights up my entire home. So if a lighting study says there's no lighting effect, I question the validity of the study. If the lighting study says it's at these levels, and all I'm saying is I just didn't see anything in the application of the plan on the mitigation for the homes about any lighting, whether it be traffic coming and going. I think you already heard the traffic. It is hazardous. The stopping and going, the number of times I almost get rear-ended coming into my driveway, or that I've watched another car being rear-ended trying to take a left into my driveway. It's very close to the intersection, so the traffic plan would have to, I saw some proposal that said one way in, one way out, and that would probably get partway there to it. But line of sight, a building isn't gonna cause, an 8-foot setback isn't gonna cause a problem with the line of sight. My mailbox post causes me a problem with line of sight, and it's about 1.5 feet. So all I'm saying is I would ask this board further consider, continue the hearing, delve a little deeper into these plans. As of right is as of right, we get that, but adding 2 levels of residential housing with an undefined plan is something that I think this board just can't approve at this time and would be harmful to the neighborhood.
Chairman, just to be clear, the 8-foot is the side yard setback, not the front yard setback. Front yard setback is 15.7.
Wow. I didn't hear that the last time. I wrote it down about 4 times, and it was 8 feet from the sidewalk, but that's okay. I'll look at it again.
It's from the side, yeah. Okay, anybody else want to comment on this? Okay. So, Mr. American, I think at this point, do you want to just come up to the microphone?
I met with, Pat, yes, I know. I met with Pat early this week, and I met with, I spoke with the safety officer today as well. And I wrote a letter, just so we could kind of consolidate High Point, all our concerns. Because I think the first meeting we went to, I had a lot of concerns. The second meeting I went to, they said there really had been no major concerns about anything, other than, the safety issues. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. I don't know if you did anybody else get the letter?
Yeah, they were all in the package.
Oh, you all got it, okay, you all got it. So I guess I'll just read it for you, for everybody else to know. It does, some of it does reiterate what we just heard, which was a great.
Could you just introduce yourself for the record?
Yes. You don't know me by now? My name's Donna Giampetro. I live at 3 Holland Way. My neighbor Tara and I
have the letter.
got together. She lived at 702 Washington Street to kind of get together and come up with our points that we discussed before. So the first is that we acknowledge that 173 High Plain Street is zoned for business. However, all surrounding properties, whether zoned for business or not, are all residential structures. Even the person who just bought that house next to it is a residential structure. And also, I think that many of you remember that they're putting a Walgreens in at the other corner, probably, I don't know, 20 years, 15 years ago, and that was zoned for business as well. That's now 3 homes, which look fitting to the neighborhood. They're beautiful homes. It looks great. So just as a side point. So a 3-story, our points of concerns are a 3-story, 40-foot structure. It's far too big for this property. It's unsuitable and out of character for the residential area, as we've said. The land slopes upward from Washington Street, so that results in the project actually being taller than the apartment buildings that are there. And the other part of that is that with kids coming down that roadway, riding their bikes or whatever, they're buzzing right along, and they're gonna be close to the, when people pull out of that area, there's gonna be loss of life. It's a real safety concern.
It is, yeah.
The site plan balconies pose a privacy and potential noise issue for all abutters. The current proposed alley for delivery trucks is in the back corner. It's unrealistic to expect that delivery trucks such as Amazon, FedEx, UPS is gonna use this unloading zone area. We know that Amazon and FedEx, they park on the road and they run to where they need to go. They're just gonna park there. It's easiest. Time is money. That's what they're gonna do. This is the same sidewalk that the school children used to walk to and from Walpole School and the Bird Middle School. I know the project meets the minimum number of parking spaces required, but there's no visitor parking space. This may create a shortage of parking for commercial and visitors, as there's no street parking available. So where do you go when you have a birthday party for your kids or something? Where are those people supposed to park? I know what people say is like, well, it'll kind of all work its way out, right? But it's gonna work its way out when there's gonna be, impact to all of us. Because it has to be, there's injury that can be sustained from those cars parking on 27. I know you can't park on 27, but we know that people do, when there's nothing else offered, they have to drop their car wherever they need to drop it, right? To do something else. That's a huge problem. The air quality and noise will be negatively impacted with the addition of the 31 potential cars and/or trucks to the neighborhood. Snow removal is going to be a significant cause of issue because of limited space on that area. Because the project's located so closely to the intersection of Route 27 and Washington Street, it poses many traffic concerns, such as the existing traffic to the left must cross the double yellow line, and has the potential to block oncoming traffic both ways. The proposal to limit access to right in, right out creates confusion and mayhem for people entering the existing property. So quiet existing neighborhood dead-end streets will now become turnaround areas for all people needing to travel northbound. Traffic will be impacted on Washington Street as well as at bottlenecks as people try to make that turn and are stopped by traffic coming out. The number of businesses and types are unknown, and therefore we had no idea how much additional traffic will be generated, or if the traffic, or if the parking will be sufficient. Confused drivers cause safety issues. Again, we're talking about school walking route. The sheer increased number of vehicles entering and exiting the property at any given time poses a safety risk for all people walking or riding their bikes on that sidewalk, or mothers walking their babies. As it is, the solar glare makes driving hazardous. In conclusion, the proposed project for 173 High Plain Street is too large for the lot. It's certainly out of character for the neighborhood. The building is unattractive and overpowering. So we appreciate your consideration to the issues, and I know some of it have already been spoken of, but we just wanted to consolidate them all, highlight the points that are most bothersome to us, and so you'd have it to look back on. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else from the public? Okay, sure, come on up.
Been here on the meeting. My name is Edward Lazri. I live close by 184, so I'm right here. So my main concern, as I mentioned many times, safety. My daughter speaks the bus over here. The other one goes to the bird schools. Myself, at least, I go out in and out from my house at least 6 times per day. I don't know how the other guys do it twice, but because I have to drop off and pick up my daughter and stuff like that. Anyway, so this is the biggest concern, because here it looks that it's far away from intersection, but it is very close. If the orange, if the light here is orange, someone can speed up there. Someone is getting out from this parking space. He's going to avoid to crash this car. He's going to come in my house. 99%. So first, safety concern. The second one is, all our neighborhood, there is no 3-store buildings. None of the neighborhoods. If you go around High Plain Street, there is no 3-store building. So this should be cool. Nice. And my only question that I have is that, let's say you mentioned that if these guys want to go full commercial, they can go without coming here, right? Is that a fair statement? They don't need your approval.
Depending on the use. So some uses are allowed by right. So if it's a business use that was allowed by right, then it may not need to meet with the board.
Correct. So, but if they decide to go for business use, also are limitation what kind of businesses can be there?
There's a whole range of businesses that can be there according to the bylaw, so, and they do not have to come to the zoning board for that.
I understand, but kind of school is close by. I don't think they can have an alcohol, right?
No, they can.
First off, they would have to get, did you say, a what?
A liquor store.
Alcohol, liquor store. So,
Tobaccos.
So, Well, if they could, they'd still have to get a permit from the select board, so,
Here,
what's that? No,
from the town.
from the town, yes. And do you know if,
It's not, no, it's not prohibited.
It's not
If it's allowed in the business district by right, then it's allowed to happen. Obviously, they would need to get a, a license for distributing alcohol from the select board, but that's a whole different thing entirely.
let me, continue.
I just wanted to find out that if these guys wants to go commercial, because right now, you have half of the town of Walpole that all the commercial buildings are empty, so. They might have good luck with the commercial, but I just want to find out what can they build there, what can be commercial. And kind of do, we as a neighbor, do you have a say on that one for the commercial?
So, through you, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
so there's a section within the bylaws, it's table 5B1, it's a table of use regulations. All towns usually have a table of use regulations where it delineates uses and then zoning districts. So, this is the business zoning district, there's a litany of uses that are either allowed by right, not allowed, or require a special permit from either planning or zoning. So, I know, the chairman is looking that up, but there's many uses that can really be there by right for a business zone property.
Is it limited, they can build a gas station there, no?
So,
I would have
so
to
I
find
have
out.
it right out, I have it right here, Patrick, I'll just say, we're not gonna go through all the things that are allowed in business tonight, but I'm looking here, hotel, motel, allowed in the business district. Outdoor dining area, accessory to a restaurant, hotel, or the same in premises, it's allowed. Theater, bowling alley, dance hall, or other indoor amusement, it's allowed in the business district. So we're not talking about, tonight, we're not talking about what specifically will go there, but these are all the things that could go there, and I think that's sort of your point.
Because now we're saying they can have 10 units, plus they can have all these things that you mentioned.
Yes,
So that means the traffic might be from 31 car to 100 cars.
Yes.
yeah, yes, I
Because
mean,
depends, these guys right now don't know what is going to be there, right? So they might have 10 units plus a bowling center, I don't know, a liquor store, I don't know what's going to happen there.
So the size of the building limits the amount of parking, or actually, we provide a minimum and a maximum for the amount of parking based upon the square footage of the building itself. So, the
They're
engineer.
saying 10 plus 20, so 10 for the business, 20 for the residential.
I think it came out to 11 for the business, but yes.
11 for business, 20, so 11, they can have a bowling, whatever they want to have. It's completely out of our neighborhood, so what we're doing here.
so, yeah, let's just say that, as far as uses, if people wanna see what uses are allowed, you take a look at the zoning bylaws, it's online, but it is, in business, I'm just looking here, bakery is allowed, medical or dental laboratory dealing directly with the consumer, I mean, there's many, many things, a bank is allowed there.
Correct, so there are so many question marks. We have 20 minutes for sure, plus unlimited other options on that area to be built or which doesn't fit with all our neighbors. Also, just want to mention, we have signed a petition. There are at least 75 people that signed the petition, all of the neighbors, excluding, we haven't received this sign off from this area here, but I guess they are happy because they just got their tree cut
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago. But all the neighbors who have signed a petition that we are against this project. If you want, we can provide a petition to you in the next meeting.
So-
Okay, sorry.
Chairman,
Okay, thank you.
sorry, just to level set and just to be clear, so the size of the building is not the issue, correct? The size of the building is allowed by right. So in theory, there could be a 3-story building, all commercial use, all business use, multiple business uses, multiple types potentially, barring whatever regulations are in the licensing. So the size of the building, stories, so in theory, and just to level set, just to bring everyone on the same page, you could in theory have an all-commercial 3-story building there with 10 businesses there, in all different variations of it, potentially
I have
barring.
to see if they meet the parking requirements with all commercial.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's not like, so I'm not saying, I didn't mean to misspeak or say like, that's like worst-case scenario, but the reality is you could have a 3-story commercial building there, the exact same size with however many businesses the parking would allow.
Yeah, you need
If they had sufficient parking.
Yeah, you need about 10 spaces per floor. So we have 31 spaces. So you could get a very similar looking building, 3 stories, 40 feet tall, that's all commercial. You could also get a 120-seat restaurant, which requires 30 parking spaces. You know, there's a bunch of different things that could go there.
And again, this is why it's important that the zoning board looks at all this stuff, because we don't determine what goes there, and it's even the applicant in the future might not be the ones determining what goes there. So it's what the bylaw says is allowed to go in these locations, and it's zoned for business.
But
That's
safety is the issue here also, correct?
that's what we're looking, that's what we can look at. And that's really the only, to be honest, that's the only thing that we can really look at. Can this be done safely? And that's why I think a traffic study is necessary. But to talk about what's gonna go there, that's really not what the zoning board does. The zoning board approves the building, and then the future, you know, whoever goes there in the future for the commercial stuff, it's all based on what the bylaw allows.
And with the mixed use, the residences are basically displacing what could be commercial. So there's only 11 parking spaces devoted to commercial use. So whatever commercial use goes in there is constrained by the 11 parking spaces that are available for it, versus a whole commercial entity would have 31 parking spaces available to it. So it would allow more commercial activity.
Yes. Oh, Dan, did you have something else? Did you have something else to add?
No.
Okay.
So I'm Maria Maya, I live at 8 Holland Way.
Yes.
So we had a petition, about 75 people supported that traffic is an issue. The majority are mothers. I am mother of 3 girls. I don't know what data he did, but on a regular, easy day for my life, I do more than 16 trips. Pick up kids, drop it off after activities, medical appointment. I not count the Amazon trucks. I not count the oil trucks. I not count my 3 neighbors from my small street coming in and out. So if we count those people together with the 16 trips, I not count my husband and my friends, my daughter's friends coming to visit my daughters, because that will be at least in an easy day, 40 trips. So it's a busy. When you are a family, you are a mother, you have kids, you have to understand the trips are a lot. I don't know if you are family, you have kids, or you have grandkids, but it's a lot of traffic. It's not just one person going in and out. That is for people who work and in and out, maybe my husband, but when you are home, you do a lot. You have to go supermarkets, places. So I submit a petition. You can go in my target.org, and you can see people I can share with you, with the whole board, the petition we submit requesting because the traffic. Families and mothers, especially mothers, signed up this. We are really concerned about our middle school kids crossing the street, making now running, just to run like crazy, be able to cross. Every day in High Plain Street, we can see the police stopping people who pass the traffic line like crazy. It's not 40 or 30 miles per hour. People run that traffic line like crazy. Many times you are waiting in red traffic line and you can see people crossing anyway the traffic line. And I've been there. I have seen how kids almost be knocked down by the cars. So it's a concern. It's a concern also that really made me think that it's on all of you, on the board and the residents in the town. We really care. We don't want to lose a life of one of our children because we don't think about safety. It's the life of our families. It's our kids. And then we were sorry because we didn't do the right job to think about safety. It's the kids. because you have to see when all middle school comes, it's not just impacting the area from maybe Peach Street to Old Post Road, from maybe a couple Benny Street, and a couple blocks from middle school. No, it's the whole town going in the major intersection. I have here the petition, it's 75 people, I can share the link, you can see the comments and everything you want. Mothers say, oh my God, oh huge, oh my God, the traffic is a nightmare. Also, having conversation with Patrick, who is the zoning, right? Yeah, Patrick? You? I was looking at you. My husband had conversation with you many times, and I know it's a lot of possibilities, more than just building a commercial. I know the applicants also, I don't think they're coming here to request residential because they want commercial. So it's because they want to also be fair, they want to make money and be everybody happy. So I know when they had the conversation said that it's another possibility. In the same foundation, you use pieces of the same foundation of the building that is right now, because the fatherhood submit, you can build a two-family home and be able to have that two-family home, reducing traffic from and save the life of many. So you have to look at different possibilities. And that was the conversation, if I'm not wrong, you had twice with my husband, Daniel and Luigi.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we can have different possibilities for the town and making everybody happy. They want residential because they are not fighting, they were building commercial in once, and the town really care about the safety, no traffic, about being able to have the kids and be able to be no nightmare later. And you want the petitions or?
Sure, yes, yep.
I couldn't print it out, everything, I can send you. I put some comments here.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, the numbers we were talking about were during the peak hour, not for the whole day. We provided additional information to you about total trips per day from use.
Anybody else have any comments? So at this point, Mr. American,
I just want to follow up with that
hold on.
family.
Can you come up to the microphone?
I just want to make sure, because we're all sitting here, we're all kind of agreeing that that's not the neighborhood for what's being proposed, okay? But we're saying, but it says this, we're people, we can change things, okay? And if that says that we can do a two-family, I think we're in agreement here that it's gonna reduce the probability of causing a death of a child, a death of a traffic, or what have you. So I wanna make sure that that's something that we can actually do, because I believe one of the articles there does say, using existing foundation, and we see this all the time, that we can actually build a nice two-family, a very nice two-family that looks very nice there. And these guys, Andrew and Anthony, can make their money like they want to. And I think we're all in agreement that it'll fit the neighborhood. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Actually, everything you said is true. But that's not the application that we have before us. We have an application for the commercial on the first
Right.
floor and apartments on the second floor.
Right.
So really, that's a conversation that, you can have with the applicant if they would, if they would do that. But I guess at this point, I don't know.
I haven't heard from the applicants. I keep hearing from Daniel Merrill here, but I never heard from Anthony and Andrew. I'd love to hear from them, because there are residents here, and we're all concerned. I live in the back, and nobody ever approached me other than the letter I received. I'd love to hear from these gentlemen on their thoughts.
Okay. So the way it works is they can, they don't even have to be here tonight. They can be here, they can speak.
understand that.
They can, and, they could build a two-family, they could leave it vacant. They can do, actually, Dan, do you own the property or is it pending?
They own it.
Okay. So their property, they can do whatever they want with it within the town's bylaws, and this is what they propose to do, so.
But we have the power to turn this down.
Uh,
Given safety and what we're hearing, there's a big safety concern here.
Yeah.
big safety concern.
Nope, and we've heard that loud and clear, and that's why we're gonna do the traffic.
Thank you,
So-
and I really appreciate you looking and representing the residents, because we pay taxes. I'm sure, I don't know if all of you live in the town.
If you're on the zoning board, you have to live in the town.
Okay, so.
Why would anybody else do this if they didn't care about the town?
I'm just,
Great
you
point,
know,
John.
we care,
You're right.
and we want to make sure we have the right thing going in there to protect the future of what's coming in there. And thank you, Mark, for bringing that up about the schools. I really appreciate that.
Okay. So, Dan, you're gonna get us an updated set of plans, that would have been helpful for tonight, but, when can we expect to have those?
Well, you want a traffic study, so we need a month.
Okay. Okay. Patrick, how we doing on the time on traffic, on, the hearing?
Early April, so we may need to actually get an extension, so we have,
April 6th.
actually, you have the
It's
project
on
folder.
the yellow folder.
I have it, yeah.
And that April 4th?
6th.
6th and the 20th.
Where do you have that?
It's right there.
Oh, no, I'm talking about, are you talking about the
90 days.
the what?
The 90 days.
The 90 days, right.
John, it's written on the front of the yellow folder.
Yellow folder. Okay, 90 days from hearing, 4th of April, does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we go beyond the 4th of April, we're going to need an extension.
When's your next meeting? In a month, not
So,
tonight.
yep, so the next meeting
April
for
6th.
April would be April 6th.
Okay, so, would request and grant an extension on the time in which to act up to and including April 30th, 2022.
Okay. That's, I'm gonna just write this.
I'd like to see the balconies taken away.
Okay, so the applicant has requested an extension until April 30th, up until April 30th, and this case will be continued until April 6th. That gives you enough time for traffic?
Yes.
Okay, to April 6th. Anybody else have anything to add on
I
that?
just had a question prior to that or whatever, is because if it does come to approval, under a special permit, we're allowed to condition things.
Yes.
Are we able to have the board consider a discussion on what cannot go into that space, the commercial space? I believe might have been done before, I'm not certain, but I just, given they keep throwing out professional use, so can we condition that a bowling alley can't be there or something? You mean like the larger
So-
scale
so-
businesses?
So to answer that question, I don't think, Bob, do you want to, I don't think the zoning board could do that, because that would go against
Yeah.
the zoning bylaw.
Okay, well, I just
Yeah.
didn't know if
I
this
don't
was
know,
just, we would have a discussion about what we thought would be a better.
If they were
If they're
amenable
amenable
to
to
a
that.
condition,
Yeah, we
But-
might be amenable to, a specific condition, but the first floor uses are allowed by right.
so I think, yeah, if it's
If you want to propose a list,
contradicted by the bylaw,
we're
then
happy
it
to,
would be an illegal
to
condition.
consider that.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to put together a list, we're happy to consider that as a possible
Okay.
condition.
I just wanted, to
Okay.
be before we get a month now to
Yeah.
think about it,
Okay,
okay?
yeah.
All right.
That's, if, that's. Yeah, okay, so, this will be continued until April 6th, and, the applicant has requested, a time extension till April 30th. But I have a motion on that.
So moved.
Moved by Jane, second by Drew. Any further discussion? And folks, this is just to continue the hearing. We're not closing anything. This is still gonna stay live. Okay, 5 regular board members voting on this. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for
We
your
will-
time.
We'll see you guys in April with the plan. Okay, the next case we have is Fuller Ave. Are the people from Fuller Ave here this evening? sorry that you've had to wait and learn about all these other things.
Mr. Chairman, I will be recusing
Okay.
myself as a direct butter. Thank you. I'm in a butter. Okay.
It's not that, but the reality is they have access to 30 open spaces,
I'm leaving all my stuff here.
so they could do refuse our commercial space.
Okay, do you want to come forward, and at this point, what you're going to do is explain your project? Everybody has a set of plans for this?
Yeah, let me know about that. So, like, depending if there's a specific use, you can't necessarily do anything, I just don't know what we have. That's really not
Hey, how are you?
Good. I mean, we can.
Good evening. My name's Deb Roach. I live at 26 Fuller Avenue, East Walpole. I have recently been building a two-car garage with a room above it. And some family circumstances has changed, and I'm requesting permission to have the room above it become an in-law for a family member.
Okay.
I do have all the plans, if you guys don't have the plans.
Nope. I'm just going through these right now. So, is the garage already built?
Yes. It's in the process. This is my builder. It's in the process of being built.
Okay, and you have a permit from the building inspector
Oh,
to,
yes.
to build this? It's meets all the requirements? And so really, it's just a question of adding the in-law unit on the second floor?
Correct. It was just originally gonna be just a room.
So, one of the things, how does this, I'm looking at the plans, how does this connect into the main home? You wanna explain?
So there's, the structure's all done, it's all signed. And so there's a breezeway that'll get you into the old, there used to be a two-car garage under, so this is to the left, and so it's an L-shaped unit. And so there's a breezeway on the first floor, which into the south. Breezeway on the second floor will get you into the main level of the house. And so pretty much, I guess in a nutshell, it's all surveyed, it's all been done, it's all framed the way it is. It's just, I guess I would say, it's all a permit for a different use of that aspect of it. Meaning it was just gonna be an open area on the second floor originally, now, because of the situation, just looking for an in-law side.
So, one of the questions is, and I don't know which one of you want to answer this, an in-law suite is supposed to be part of the house. How is this not a two-family house where basically you have a separate access?
There's full access from both floors into both parts of the main house.
You can walk through one part of the house to the other, there's a door.
Is there a dedicated entrance to above the garage from the outside or exit?
Yes, there's, in
Both?
front of the building, there's two garage doors and there's a set of stairs that take up the reception.
And I know I could do the math on this, and I apologize, but what's the approximate square feet of? 936, okay. So, sorry, this door or this door? The middle door goes it right directly into the unit, sorry?
That'll go up to the second level. It goes, actually, you walk right in, you go into both garage bays, and then there's a door at the bottom. That is.
The main house?
No, it's not. That's
Okay.
like, actually, it's L-shaped, there's like a family room on the back of the main house. The house is like a Victorian.
Yep.
And that's just on the back section of it.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get my bearings on the breezeways, like,
The house.
no, like, I understand.
Drops way down.
No, I understand, and I totally, you did a good job explaining. I'm just trying to, like, figure out, like, so, am I looking at I'm looking at the back of the house here? This is the side, like, do you know, like, where's the front of the house, where's the side, oh, sorry.
The front of the house is right here. I'm out here.
So I'm not looking at the front of the house, the front of the house is here.
The front of the house is out in front of this.
Is this the breezeway?
This is
from
the
that-
breezeway right
On
here.
both
This is
floors?
the
This is what
new-
you're referring to in the basement access?
Correct.
And then,
Into
okay,
the main level flooring
Yeah,
here.
thank
So
you.
that's like a box that's on the back of the Victorian.
got it. Okay, sorry, I just was unclear, because I couldn't see the front of the house. Is there a picture of the front of the house, or am I
Yeah,
crazy?
no, there
Sorry.
was a picture of that. Wait a minute. There is a picture.
Oh, you know what, double-sided printed, I probably didn't see it.
No, wait a minute, no. I saw it.
Who will be occupying the space?
I believe my mom. Right now, it's my mom. Right now, she's going through a lot of stuff right now, so I wanna make sure that I have a space for her. And she's also from Walpole.
One more time, and don't hate me. So that's the front of the house, right?
Correct, that's the front of the house.
So now show me, just bring me there, sorry.
This is the front of the house,
Yep.
right? This is the street.
Yep.
This is attached to the back of that house. This
Yep.
is old. This is all old.
Yep.
So the only new part is the garage and that two-story
Yeah, so
breezeway.
where is that, that garage goes straight back this way?
It's L-shaped. It's over here now. So if you
Okay.
envision it, you know, it's like this.
Got it,
That's the garage coming down the
okay,
driveway.
sorry.
The house goes back far.
I'm getting there, very slowly, I'm having
You
a hard
you
time.
walk in the house and you don't realize how
Yeah.
long it is.
Well, just in the plans, it's tough to follow the bouncing ball, that's all. So when, sorry, are these the plans you got your building permit with for the addition that you have right now?
So the original plan and then
Okay. You just changed, you just added
I
and.
just changed the layout above the garage. Original, I think it's Yeah, I mean, this is the part that changed. Originally, instead of being a bedroom and a living room, it was just two
Yep.
open rooms upstairs.
Okay. You wanna see what it looks like from the air?
Yeah. So, and maybe I'm the only one having trouble with this, and I apologize, like,
No, that's okay.
I'm
That's
just
okay.
really like,
So, one of the things, what the bylaw allows is an in-law suite. It does not allow a separate unit to be created in the house. It has to be an in-law suite. So my earlier question was, how does this actually tie into the house as far as the flow, meaning, is this closed off as a separate unit, or is it?
When you, the big main room, right, has the little breezeway that you come in from downstairs or upstairs. There's a little, breezeway. A hallway that has a closet. That's the door that goes right into the main house.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you'd have that door open and you could be in either house at any time.
so what in the interest of me still being confused.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
apologize, I would like to see a plan that shows the existing structure, how it connects to this new one, and then where it's actually laid out on this plot plan, like the actual structure that exists today. It's not within this, maybe you,
Right here.
It's the as-built.
Have you looked at, this is the garage, as-built garage,
yep,
right here. This is the breezeway connecting.
this piece, got it. Thank you.
Okay, is that?
Through the- So you gotta go through the garage into the house?
It's 2 stories, so, let me just, the plan shows, it says garage, 1 story, looks like it's on the back of the house, is,
It's not, I don't know what that's, I don't know why that says.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make this.
no, you're not, Patrick.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with the building commissioner about it, because obviously it's a unique house. You know, obviously the addition of the old garage becoming part of the house and carting the new floor area. The as-built plan showing the newly constructed garage, that is now functioning as the garage. So I guess the as-built plan is incorrect in terms of what's labeled as a 1-story garage is actually a 2-story addition of the house, of the house's floor area. So the new addition is the first floor garage and then second floor proposal as an in-law unit with the
Got it.
breezeway connecting the old structure with the new structure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, I understand. No, because it was really confusing, because I'm like, that's a garage, but thank you. So the garage is now actually residential, and the garage is here.
Yeah, so the garage, which, yeah, you got
You
it.
got me there. Thank you.
Nope.
2-car garage with a in-law suite above it, and no separate utilities for this. It's all in one. And we have standard conditions that we do for all the in-law. It has to be a person of, how many degrees of separation, anybody?
3 degrees of separation.
3 degrees of separation, or less, and.
Less.
What's that?
3 degrees or less?
Yes.
I wonder what 3 degrees would be, what would that be?
Be your cousin.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. Bob, any thoughts, concerns?
Nope. I just noticed on the report that we got that we would need to also grant a special permit because the lot is not of sufficient size, which I don't have a problem with, but we would just need to make note of that in the approval.
And for some reason, back in the 1980s, this was not approved for but that,
Yeah, I think,
but that was, and I looked at the decision, it said because of insufficient information was provided, and we're working under a different bylaw now. But I did
I'm not
think-
sure the in-law, the in-law suite bylaw even existed.
It didn't.
No.
No, they were looking for a variance, and it just said, based on, the board, it is the finding of the board that insufficient information was presented to substantiate the fact that a definite hardship exists, so, okay. Okay, so what we'll do is there anybody from the public to speak on this?
I'm a neighbor, but I'm just listening.
Are you,
He's my friend.
okay, well, you know, one of the things, if you're in favor of it, that's a good thing for them. If you're opposed to it, we want to hear it, so,
I'm not opposed.
okay. Anything else?
No.
I do have one question, just
okay.
because we did recently the vested rights through the state. If there was a sale of the house, would it by right be accounted as an in-law, or would they need to come back and reapply to the zoning board for the use of an in-law?
They would need to,
If it wasn't these people, but the next potential tenants of the property?
Like if I sold it.
I believe you need to record, you have to record the decision with the registry of deeds.
I'll
So
have
that's,
to go to the registry of
Functions
deeds.
as a deed restriction.
yeah, that's a deed restriction, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So they don't have to come back.
Do not.
So once it's granted.
One of the things that they mentioned in the vested rights recently was that the more you can condition these projects, and I apologize, it's just happens to be relevant in this situation, but you can condition it that the opportunity for where it would become right of use and vested for the property, it would actually have to come back in front of the board to be or you want it, I apologize.
No,
But-
yeah, I'm just trying to think of the bylaw.
So,
Usually we've had it
I
as-
think the issue is that what makes it a suite is that it has cooking and it has, you know, it's a self-sustaining sort of dwelling unit. So, you know, you could remove that, if you know, I guess if somebody in the future came forward and said, we want to continue to use it, and then for some reason the board said, no, they have to rip that stuff out of the building, you know, like they wouldn't be allowed to have a second kitchen, all of that stuff. So that's why I think it functions as more like a deed restriction, where it puts future buyers on notice that this part of the house is an in-law suite, it's not, you know, a second unit or anything like that. And they have to comply.
It's not a rental unit or something like that.
So you'd have to still.
Well, it doesn't have a time utility, that's why we don't
That's,
do utility.
I was just gonna say, Mr. Delaney, that, you know, in 5B2B, subsection, I guess, 5 and 6 is where we kinda go into the whole, ownership requirements with the in-law unit, and it goes into the property owner of any accessory in-law suite shall record with the registry of deeds, certified copy of the decision granting the accessory in-law suite, and certified copy shall be filed with the Department of Inspectional Services, which is our building department, where a master list of accessory in-law units shall be kept. And when ownership of the property changes, the new owner shall notify the building commissioner as to update the accessory in-law suite list. So that seems to be a way that, when this bylaw was created, they tried to create some internal inventory of those units.
It's just
But they don't have to come back to the zoning board.
No.
It's just a notification. so-
Are you saying that we could limit?
I'm not asking that, I guess it would just be something that I'd propose to the board, is that, in a conditioning of a case such as an in-law transfer of ownership, be brought before the board when,
Yeah.
without overstepping the bylaw boundaries.
That's the only thing, I think, because we've regulated it further to have that already within the bylaw itself. I'm not sure if that's necessarily needed.
And not in this case.
And
Yeah.
not for nothing, if I lived in a house, I sold it to my brother and my mother lived there.
And kick your mother out?
No, but, no, I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean, there's so many variables. in
Right.
there, It's like, it gets
Okay.
wild.
Okay, I think we are in good shape here. So, Bob, you made the point that they're going to also need a special permit for an undersized lot? Is that?
Yeah, well, one of the requirements in 5B2, section C, has the list of sort of dimensional requirements. And let's see, so on the plot plan, the lot area is a little around 12,500 square feet. And the minimum lot size for the in-law suite is 15,000. But then there's the asterisk that says, you know, this can be varied by special permit.
Okay. So I think what I'll do is when I ask for the motion, we'll have a motion to approve the in-law suite with the standard conditions. Does anybody else want anything else besides just standard conditions? Okay. And then also at the same time, I'll ask for a motion for a special permit for a non-conforming lot size. Does that make sense? Or do it separately?
Yeah, no, I think it would be just, I don't know, I think just one vote is probably fine.
Yeah, I think we're.
As per the plans, you know.
Yeah,
submitted.
and I'll reference the plans.
I didn't, I think that there was a comment maybe from the fire department, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm shuffling my papers around, so I don't have it right in front of me, but,
Usually the fire department has the comments about,
Inspection.
right, I don't think it was anything out of the ordinary, but, that would be an additional condition. Yeah, I think it's out here.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, I know we had comments from fire, health, engineering, and
yep, so we have comments from the fire department, Deputy Chief Paul Barry, The plans will have to be submitted to the fire department, through the building department for review, and an inspection for compliance will be conducted prior to occupancy. And we also had, Board of Health had no concerns because it's on, or no comments because it's on the sewer. And finally, from engineering, the town engineer Carl Baldorf wrote, "We have reviewed the submitted plans and only and find the plan to be in order. We have no other comments or concerns." But Bob, I think that's a good find on your part about needing a special permit because of the lot size, so we'll just take that.
I'll give that credit to our friends from the Economic Development Group.
Touche.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Could, do you have a date on the construction plans?
I see 122 revision on some of them, but 223 on this one.
Yep, I see actually 22320.
One that shows the bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, but like this one says 122, 22.
Okay, 12222.
Yeah, it says, second floor amended plan for in-law.
Okay, could I have a motion, for everybody good with this? No problem. Okay, could I have a motion to approve the in-law suite and, for 26 Fuller Ave with the standard conditions? And also a special permit for a non-conforming lot size, and this is all based on the plans, the plot plan dated March 18th, 2021, and the construction plans dated 1/22/22.
So moved.
Moved by Jane, second by Drew. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, that gives you
You have a great
approval.
night.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Appreciate your time.
You guys got a tough job.
I know, I love you.
Are you still on the air?
Actually, it was pretty interesting though, to hear what was going on.
That's great.
We're always looking for more members for the zoning board in the future.
I don't know, you guys work awful hard.
Yeah, apply online.
Thanks, okay. Okay, let's see, minutes from, previous meeting.
Is that there for 2.5 hours?
I have one comment about February 16th, not to jump ahead.
Yep, no, that's,
On the second page, I had asked Mr. Attorney Pucci if the board could vote on the current plans before them. My intent, and I believe I stated, was the incomplete set of plans that were before us. What paragraph is that? It is,
It's a little more than halfway down.
on page 3, actually.
Sorry,
Yeah, page 3.
Gotcha.
Yep. And I do recall, so it should say, the current incomplete.
Yep.
Complete plans. Bob, did you have anything else?
Just a minor one on the second page, the larger paragraph of Mr. Pucci provided clarification. On that paragraph, you see that?
Yep.
Fourth line down, it says denied. Let's strike denied.
Anything else on that? Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 16th?
So moved.
Moved by Jane, second by Drew. Any further discussion on the minutes with those two revisions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. We also have minutes from February 2nd, This is, I think Judy, you had some changes that
Yep.
you wanted in this. Are
Yeah,
they
all set.
incorporated in
Yep.
this?
Mhm.
Okay. I will not be voting on this, but could I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 2nd?
I won't be voting on this.
Oh, yeah,
either.
that's right. Jane won't
That's right.
either.
Second.
Moved by Drew, second by Bob. Any further discussion on the minutes? Members that were there can vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? I'll abstain. Jane abstains. Okay, so carried. Good. Okay, anything anything else?
Nothing on the agenda.
Nothing on the agenda. I did put some stuff on the agenda for next time, just procedurally how we'll move forward. But unless somebody else has something for the board, that wraps it up. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Jane. Second by Drew. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Good night, everybody.